Faced with the humiliating defeat in the Lebanon, President Reagan's government was desperate to shore up the vision of a moral world where a good America struggled against evil. And to do this, they were going to create a simple villain, an imaginary enemy, one that would free them from the paralyzing complexity of real Middle Eastern politics. And the perfect candidate was waiting in the wings: Colonel Gadaffi, the ruler of Libya. The Americans were going to ruthlessly use Colonel Gadaffi to create a fake terrorist mastermind. And Gadaffi was going to happily play along, because it would turn him into a famous global figure. Colonel Gadaffi had taken power in a coup in the 1970s. But from the very start, he was convinced that he was more than just the leader of one country. He believed that he was an international revolutionary whose destiny was to challenge the power of the West. When he was a young officer, Gadaffi had been sent to England for training. And he had detested the patronising racism that he said he had found at the heart of British society. Once in power, Gadaffi had developed his own revolutionary theory, which he called the Third Universal Theory. It was an alternative, he said, to communism and capitalism. He published it in a green book, but practically no one read it. He had sent money and weapons to the IRA in Ireland to help them overthrow the British ruling class. But all the other Arab leaders rejected him and his ideas. They thought that he was mad. And by the mid-1980s, Gadaffi was an isolated figure, with no friends and no global influence. Then suddenly that changed. In December 1985, terrorists attacked Rome and Vienna airports simultaneously, killing 19 people, including 5 Americans. There was growing pressure on President Reagan to retaliate. President Reagan immediately announced that Colonel Gadaffi was definitely behind the attacks.
These murderers could not carry out their crimes without the sanctuary and support provided by regimes such as Colonel Gaddafi's in Libya. The Rome and Vienna murders are only the latest in a series of brutal terrorist acts committed with Gaddafi's backing.
But the European security services, who investigated the attacks, were convinced that Libya was not involved at all, and that the mastermind behind the attacks was in fact Syria, that the terrorists had been directed by the Syrian intelligence agencies.
But the Americans say that the attack at Rome airport was organized by Gadaffi, not by Damascus.
No.
What do you say?
We don't have any evidence.
You have no evidence?
Supporting such affirmation. The only evidence we have shows a Syrian connection.
You say that it was Libya, and the president said the evidence of Libya's culpability was irrefutable.
Yeah.
But the Italian authorities to whom I've spoken say emphatically on the record that their investigations have shown that it was entirely masterminded by Syria.
I don't agree with that at all.
Well, they've interrogated the surviving terrorists.
I must just say I don't agree with that.
But you've no evidence that Libya was in on the planning either.
Our evidence on Libya is circumstantial but very strong.
But why does the president then say it's irrefutable if you call it circumstantial?
Well, people can be convicted and sentenced in our courts on circumstantial evidence.
But what made it even more confusing was that although there seemed to be no evidence that Gadaffi had been behind the attacks, he made no attempt to deny the allegations. Instead, he went the other way and turned the crisis into a global drama, threatening suicide attacks against America. Gadaffi now started to play a role that was going to become very familiar. He grabbed the publicity that had been given to him by the Americans and used it dramatically. He promoted himself as an international revolutionary who would help to liberate oppressed peoples around the world, even the blacks in America. Gadaffi arranged for a live satellite link to a mass meeting of the Nation of Islam in Chicago. Gadaffi told them that Libya was now their ally in their struggle against white America. Gadaffi promised that he would supply weapons to create a black army in America of 400,000 men. If white America refuses to accept blacks as US citizens, he told them, it must therefore be destroyed. Gadaffi also invited a group of German rocket scientists to come to Libya to build him a rocket. He insisted it had no military purpose. Libya was now going to explore outer space. But no one believed him. Journalists warned that Gadaffi was really preparing to attack Europe, vividly dramatising the new danger. The Americans and Gadaffi now became locked together in a cycle of mutual reinforcement. In the process, a powerful new image was created that was going to capture the imagination of the West. Gadaffi became a global supervillain, at the head of what was called a rogue state, a madman who threatened the stability of the world. And Gadaffi was loving every minute of it. Then there was another terrorist attack at a discotheque in West Berlin. A bomb killed an American soldier and injured hundreds. The Americans released what they said were intercepts by the National Security Agency that proved that Colonel Gadaffi was behind the bombing, and a dossier that they said proved that he was also the mastermind behind a whole range of other attacks. President Reagan ordered the Pentagon to prepare to bomb Libya. But again, there were doubts, this time within the American government itself. There were concerns that analysts were being pressured to make a case that didn't really exist. And to do it, they were taking Gaddafi's rhetoric about himself as a global revolutionary and his manic ravings, and then representing them as fact. And in the process, together, the Americans and Gadaffi were constructing a fictional world. The European intelligence agencies told the Americans that they were wrong, that it was Syria that was behind the bombing, not Libya. But the Americans had decided to attack Libya because they couldn't face the dangerous consequences of attacking Syria. Instead, they went for Gadaffi, a man without friends or allies.
Libya had, for less downside consequences, if you will. There's less Arab support for Gadaffi. We figured there would be less Soviet support for Gadaffi. There's no question but what Libya was more vulnerable than Syria and Iran.
It was a soft
and
target.
that is certainly an element, of course.
In April 1986, the Americans attacked Libya. Their targets included Colonel Gaddafi's own house. Immediately after the attack, Gaddafi appeared in the ruins to describe what had happened.
The family were asleep, and my wife was, that day, tied down to the bed because she had a slip disc. I tried to rescue the children, and the house started to collapse, as you can see, and the books started to burn. They concentrated on the children's room so that they would kill all the children. Our small adopted daughter was killed, and 2 of our children were injured.
But yet again, Gaddafi might have been lying. Ever since then, there have been rumours that his adopted daughter actually survived. But many other children were killed in the raid because the American bombing was so inaccurate. Gaddafi realised that the attention of the whole world was now focused on him, and he grabbed the moment to promote his own revolutionary theory, the Third Way, as a global alternative